All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, thank you for whoever filled in all of the surveys that were sent out recently. There was this little survey, short survey to figure out a couple of things to help us with this training, but also the bigger survey that we sent out a couple weeks ago. We got a lot of great feedback, and that all pertains to these trainings that we're trying to kick off. So today's training, the first training, and then we are taking all that feedback that you guys gave us, and we've kind of moved our schedule around. So it was very helpful. So thank you very much. And those of you that volunteered to help train in specific areas, I will be reaching out to some of you for the next training. I think we're going to do more observations, punch lists, RFIs, and then it also kind of how it ties into QR codes. So we'll do our QR codes today. Richard Harris is a PM in our St. Louis office. Corey Ladke, Corey, sorry if I screwed up your name. He's assistant PM out in Colorado, and Kaylin Smalls is a PE in Colorado. So these three are helping with this training today. They've got some feedback, some stories to share, how setting this up and using it on their jobs worked for them, and maybe some things that didn't quite work for them, but you guys can learn from those as well. Dave Brown, Shane O'Brien, and Kristen Alexander are all online as well. Those are Procore representatives. Dave Brown has worked with us for a while on implementations with financials. He's also strategic. He's now moved completely strategic project consultant. And he's going to be our expert for a lot of things quality and safety wise. So you'll see a lot of Dave and Shane as well. So without further ado, I'll let those guys take off and introduce themselves a little bit better so you get a good feel for who they are, where they've come from. Also, if you've got questions, put them in the chat. So any questions you have, put them in the chat. We've got some activities to do, so please don't hesitate to jump in when you need to. I'll let Dave take it over.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie, and good to meet everyone. So yeah, don't let my transition from an implementation manager to an SPC like dictate how financials went, the rollout. It's going really well. I just wanted to be focused more on the project management and quality and safety side. So my background was I used to be a PE, APM, and then moved into an analytics role. So I've scanned a QR too. I've created probably maybe 10,000 punch items in my life. Or my career anyway. And so now, over here on Team Procore, helping other folks, get more value out of the tools that they already have. And I'll kick it over to Shane real quick for a brief intro, but Shane's another SPC on our team. And since we got a lot of Brinkmann folks here, I wanted to make sure that I brought at least 2 other Procore people with me. So we have like a good 1-to-10 ratio rather than just one of us.
Hi guys, as Dave said, my name is Shane O'Brien. I'm also a strategic product consultant with Procore. I come from the industry. I was, working my way up through internships, PE, APM, all while I was a Procore end user as well. So now Dave and I's main role is just, helping companies streamline their processes and fit their processes to our Procore tools. So great to be here today. And I think we've got some use cases and whatnot from some Brinkmann folks.
Yeah, and Shane and I wouldn't be able to do what we do without Kristen, your implementation manager. So Kristen, I don't know if you want to say hi or introduce yourself at all.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Kristen Alexander. I'm the implementation manager. So I've been working closely with Julie and Miranda on different Procore products and tools to implement throughout Brinkmann's jobs and offices. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We love this continued education. And we have a great session today and future sessions for everyone. One more thing, sorry, Dave. This virtual training is being recorded and it will be placed in the Procore company level admin tool. If you don't have access to that tool, please go to Julie and Miranda with those questions.
And eventually, I'm sure, Julie, this will end up in the training center, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, without, further ado and other introductions here, really what we want to, based on what we heard from, your teams, Kaylin, Richard, Corey, and other folks, we wanted to help or help you all better understand ways to take advantage of locations, either, just picking them in a drop-down list or using QR codes. And Julie actually had a really good analogy of this being a map for your projects. So if you've ever had frustrations, either yourself, not being able to find a punch item associated with a room, or, linking an RFI to something, or if you found that you're spending a lot of time showing other people on your job sites, where to find things, like telling the design team, like, hey, these are the items that are ready for punch in that room, or asking a subcontractor, like, hey, when are you going to finish your deficiency items in this floor? Those types of questions, we're hoping to give you some tools today so that you can go out and apply them, on your projects, really as soon as tomorrow. So definitely be thinking about that today. How you could take what you're learning and put it into practice, even if it's just one little thing. We've got some really great, kind of examples from folks that you work with on how they've taken advantage of this feature, which may seem kind of basic, but it is really overall with the goal of getting the right information to the right people at the right time. So with that, I don't know if whoever is the most caffeinated, I would say between Richard, Corey, and Kaylin, if you wanted to jump in just with kind of your experiences on the locations tool and maybe what you're hoping other folks today are going to be able to get out of our workshop.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I'm Richard and I'm out of the St. Louis office, like Julie had said a minute ago. Wanted to kind of, I guess when Julie started talking about doing these sessions, I'm super passionate about locations, mainly because I still go on job sites, in different places, even today, and see that people aren't always utilizing them. And in my opinion, maybe they're one of the most usable and cohesive part of Procore, because we know about observations, we know about submittals, we know about photos, and those are tools that we utilize every day, but it's just one click of a button that organizes all of those things and puts them into a singular location, so you can go and tell a story with the entire use of a room, right? If you're used to unitized buildings, everything that's ever happened, whether it be a punch list item, a safety issue, a photo, anything you can think of, you can filter based on that single location, and you can identify it. So really, it's one of those reporting entities that I think is being underused inside of our organization. And today, I just want me and Keenan and Corey want to share a couple of things to help you guys see the big picture and really make them relatable to what we've used them on in the past and how successful we've been. One of the things that I think in Brinkmann by itself is the biggest, I guess the division is what I would call it, is that some people work on unitized buildings and other people work on warehouse style buildings, right? And the difference between those two things, sometimes obviously it's super easy to go and add locations to places that are throughout a unitized building, right? You're using unit 101, unit 102, common areas, so on and so forth. So those kind of come built into a package that you can kind of easily go and filter through a set of plans, and you can assign those locations. When it comes to tilt-up style buildings or warehouses, maybe it doesn't seem as straightforward, but I know that I'd gone into the practice, Dave, I've gone into the practice or the setup job. If you want to pull up those locations, I do want to spend a second, because I do feel like this is one of those things that maybe people aren't as comfortable utilizing in a warehouse. But Dave had a really good point whenever we went through earlier this week, and we kind of identified the different uses or the roadmap that you can build to help identify exactly what it is that you're building and how you can make that relatable to your contractors. And so in order to kind of make this mean something to not only those who are in unitized construction, but also those of us who are in warehouses, going out and even assign, we think about the little nifty QR code that you can go stick on a door jamb and you can call it this space, but that isn't necessarily the limitations of that's a great benefit that they offer, being able to identify locations inside of a building. But then also, I've kind of went through here this morning and identified, you've got different phases to your concrete pours, right? Your slab on grade. You can go in and you can identify phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And if you take the time to include observations or location, those items are easier to locate if they present issues in the future, or even just talk about the things and identify what issues you faced previously so they don't continue to grow up and cause problems. It's a really great reporting mechanism in that. Also, Dave had the great idea of using just specific locations for equipment. So if you're using DOAS number 1 or air handler or whatever, backup emergency generator, anything of that nature, you can easily identify that singular piece of equipment. You can go in and say that there was an issue, there was a maintenance done, there was, whatever it might be, you can identify in a history. And then whenever you go and you filter through that on your tablet or iPad, and you can say, well, this is what happened on that date, or this is the photo that was taken, this is the information I have, without having to go through a bunch of extra photos to try to filter down to that. Again, roof sequencing, going through and just from grid, possibly from grid line to grid line, just identifying sections of a roof. So you're not going through oceans of photos trying to figure out that particular location, that you can say, this is where the issue is, this is where the leak was, this is where the observation took place. So you can identify, yeah, that was created, but also fixed. And so I could kind of, and then ultimately, like tilt up panels, I know that, kind of going through and QCing those items, you can create exactly like Tommy Westrich and I had a conversation this morning, being able to correlate the location and all the observations to a singular location, being that tilt up panel, and any rebar issues that happen inside of there, any quality issues that you've seen, being able to, whenever that is ready to go, going right back to it, say, selecting location 1, you're not going through a bunch of different old observations or whatever, trying to find the ones that are relevant to that panel. They are all right there, immediate in one spot, easy filtering tool, and then pictures and everything just tied right there. So I think, again, I say all that and I walk through that real quickly just to be able to say that I think that there's a division to think that unit or locations are only relevant to help people be able to identify where a location is in the building. But this is also a huge user-friendly tool that allows for you to filter things almost immediately, to be able to go to and say, this is what needs to happen and this is where. So, but does anybody have any questions about that? Maybe you're on a unit building right now, or a tilt up. No, any questions or anything? Dave, I'm knocking it out, buddy.
Oh, it's all
So-
good.
So
No, and so good
yeah.
to know for sure on that. And we'll get into some of the, how we're going to do the setup, or how you can do the set of different options here. We can talk through that.
Mhm.
I guess before we get into, any of the configuration, and kind of think of everything we're doing right now is we're in the office preparing before we head out into the field, and what we do in the breakout rooms will be kind of like what you would do out in the field. Kaylin, I know you come from kind of more of the multifamily and industrial side that's kind of on maybe the unit job type breakdown of locations. I'm curious, you had mentioned, how this could help you relay information to other people on those types of jobs. Was there any, what type of experience have you had getting the information to folks that maybe aren't employees of Brinkmann, using this type of feature?
Yeah, so I guess with unitized jobs, the big thing is typically your punch list or your observations. So we utilized this in my last project. We had the QR codes on the door jambs. So when you went into that unit, you can pull up an active list of deficiencies, any problems or anything like that. The thing that I like is, kind of pivoting off of Richard, this can be applied to, all jobs other than the unit jobs. So I like to think of the locations or the ability to use these QR codes as almost like a file structure or independent folder for that location. So you can upload plans, you can upload photos, you can link RFIs. So you don't necessarily have to think of it so much of as a location, but it's almost like a live folder or a QR accessible folder, which is super useful, especially when you have plan revisions and you get into a funky area in your building that might have some different structural or different architectural features than the rest of the building. You can highlight those things there. But with this good tool and everything, it does kind of have some downfalls in that sense of, if you create a location for every single room, and then once you get into that bedroom, you've got a location for your kitchen, a closet in the kitchen, a bathroom, all of these things, it can end up getting a little more complicated, I guess. So I like to use this as a tool to save time, especially during punch lists, so you can get in there quick, get to something. But as you can see, as Dave's creating these tiers here, you'd have to go through and you have to click on each side, or you're clicking in the closet, you're going to the upper shelf, you're going to the left side. You can put a locate or an observation or some sort of file or something there. But then when you want to go to the next room, or you're turning the corner and now there's something on the right side of the closet, you've got to go back, create another tier. It can get to a point where it slows you down. And when you're setting these up, I could see that being something that scares people away from even wanting to do this, because it scared me away at first. It's just, you see someone that has an example, or on the Procore, it has examples of what it should look like. They've got it fully decked out, all the tiers filled out. But just talk with your project team and see what would work best for you guys. I think if you have a location of the unit or room 101 here, and then if you take it to another tier and you can have your bedroom or your bedroom 1, bathroom 1, you don't necessarily have to go too into the details there, just for time's sake. But like I said, it's all project specific, dependent, and what your goal is. You can have these set up with the goal of just doing punch, but you could also have them set up at the beginning when you're still in the dirt, and designating areas that you may think are useful to use that folder or file structure there.
Yeah, that's a great point, and something that we'll play around in the workshop component and the breakout rooms. Is a good example of trying to figure out how granular to be. If you have a floor plan and you're pinning punch items, RFIs, observations, photos to a drawing, maybe this 4th tier is good enough. If you've got the room in there, that's fine, because people can pull it up on the plan and say, oh, it's over here, or it's on this side of the kitchen. You don't necessarily need to overlap, how you're describing the locations. And I think, Corey, when we were talking the other day, there was some concept of like phasing it and how to like maybe approach, how granular to get and when to have that in here. I didn't know if you had anything to add before we get into some of the administration stuff here.
Yeah, so Richard and Kaylin's made both great points. Another one that I would add is we're starting to get into a lot of these multifamily projects with phase turnovers. And being that, obviously working these, you think of each phase as a tier of a location. And then again, just goes to how you want to break it down by floor, by area, by phase, whatever that may be. But again, I think similar to Kaylin, it's kind of, I've tried it both ways on a couple different multifamily jobs. And, when you get in past the unit, it gets a little tricky I would say manage all of the like smaller locations like closets or, whatever it may be. So yeah, I think another tip that I've seen too is I've used floor levels versus the phase in differing tiers. The only thing you want to watch out there for is when you're filtering to like print the QRs. If you wanted like all of your units in area B, you'd want to set up that structure so that way you know, all that would be included in that same area. Dave, I don't know if we have a reference that we could pull up for that or not, but if that's making sense.
I'm not sure if we have one here, but I think kind of what you're getting at is being able to print, you know, the codes at the top level and then anything underneath, you know, at
Yep.
that point. I think the name of the game and what we'll kind of experiment with here today, and I'll talk a little bit about it now as far as like the, you know, setup here of the hierarchy, is take it slow. You know, don't put in all 100 units if you're still in the ground. You know, put in something that's going to work for how your job is set up now, getting back to, you know, what Richard was saying of like either grid lines, you know, or, you know, just below grade or things like that. It's really tempting for us, you know, especially in the GC world, to just put everything in once and be done with it. That's when folks like me and Shane come in and clients are like, hey, I've done this, you know, location hierarchy. I need to move things around. And then we have to be the bad guy and say, hey, sorry, you can't move one location up and down or from one tier to the next. So that's exactly why we're doing this workshop today, so that you know those pitfalls and you as a team can execute on building a hierarchy like this as it makes sense for where you're at in the job and feeling comfortable adding on to it as things move, you know, time moves on. So basically take it slow and take a deep breath before you do like 6,000 locations, because it might be kind of hard to undo it. But any questions from the audience? Like if you don't want to come off mute, feel free to put it in the chat of anything that, you know, we talked about so far on kind of like the why you should even care about putting locations in here, or, you know, what's maybe a value of how on your project. It's totally fine. If not, we can keep going. All right. So next on the agenda anyway is just we'll put on our office, you know, folks hat, and we'll kind of pretend that we're getting things queued up, you know, in the trailer or wherever before actually heading out into the field. So a couple of things just to kind of like reiterate on, you know, from what we heard from Corey, Kaylin, and Richard, is the place that you're going to want to set up these locations is in your project's admin tool. So y'all should be able to see this, at least be able to see the locations tool here. These are controlled by granular permissions. So if you don't see that, you know, reach out to Julie and we can troubleshoot that on the side. But once you're in the admin tool, you'll want to go here. And some of the feedback that we got from the team was one box you'll definitely want to make sure you check is this little one down here at the very bottom. I don't know if y'all can see that. So it just means, hey, only allow locations to be created in the location manager here. And the reason that you'd want to do that is so that you can have this kind of hierarchy here that we've been talking about. You may see that there's some other, you know, items here in the first tier, and these are what happen when you don't turn that on. You don't really have a good structure there, so you wouldn't be able to necessarily see, hey, what's everything in Unit 101? Yeah. So good thing to check for if you're the one kind of setting this up is making sure that box is checked there. And from there, there's really no wrong way of entering these locations in here. You know, enter them in as easily as you can, whether you're kind of doing it manually like we were doing here, or, you know, if you want to do them in bulk, either maybe you have a Revit model that you can pull the locations in from, or you want to try using a CSV file or an Excel file to import. The CSV is a great way to do it if you know exactly how you want to have it broken down. Julie, I don't know if you want to jump in here, but I know that there are some limitations right now with the imports app. And so if you want to go the bulk import route, you just need to reach out to your project's admin.
Yep, absolutely. So for now, you can, it will pull up like an Excel file, CSV file. You'll type all of your things in and it will dump everything in all at one time. But to get it dumped in, you just need to reach out to any of your project administrators and they can get that done for you. Or Miranda or I can help you with that as well.
And also on that, and I'm not sure if it's something we'd want to have available to everybody, but Corey and I, when we were first diving into this about a year ago, he had the CSV list already and he had a beast of a multifamily. So basically every room you could think of that would be in a multifamily, every unit was already there. So it was really just me going into the tiers and deleting out what we didn't want from that. So I don't know if it's something we'd want to have readily available or standardize, just a full-blown list that we can, it'll look similar to this. And a lot of us we're used to working in Excel, so it's a little more intuitive than working in Procore. So once you do kind of get the hang of it, I think this is definitely the way to go, just because you can, if you have a unit 200 through 300, you can click and drag that cell down instead of having to, enter in everything. So once you get into it, there are some tricks and tips you can learn, but I'm not sure if that's something we'd want to provide to everybody.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This is much more flexible Excel, than the locations manager in Procore. So I'm a big proponent of using the best tool for the job. So if this works for you, absolutely do that. Just know that there's like a little bit of a lead time associated with that. So don't have this, queued up and then send it to your admin and say, hey, I need you to upload it in 5 minutes because I got the architect and the owner here and we're trying to punch. I mean, you could try. I don't think it would work, but so any questions on like how to just get the locations in there or the options that are on your table? Understood, you may not know which one you want to choose. That's fine. Experimentation and testing is how you can kind of figure that out. All right, so let's assume that we got, the hierarchy that's going to work right now for, our session, or at least our project today. The next way that you're going to want to kind of think about making these locations discoverable is printing out the actual codes. So we can talk about some different options here, for how you could use this on your job. We have, both the ability here to say what to print. So, you can choose just a single one or print it for an entire tier, and everything underneath it. And then we have 2 format options right now. One is 1 code per page. So you get, I don't know if you can see what's behind me. You get like these big codes right here that are on the wall, or you could have smaller labels like this that are more of they're 30 on an individual sheet, and you can print them out and put them on, door frames and things of that nature. So from lessons learned from what we heard from this team and from what I've heard from clients, don't skimp on the paper that you use for this. If you're going to print the 30 label Averys, I don't get a kickback on Avery labels or anything like that. I don't think nobody at Procore does, but we've heard of folks like putting these things on glass or on frames and then having a really tough time taking them off. So use the ones that are designed to either go on glass and pull off without a residue, or, if you're doing a tilt up and maybe there's a column that's going to be hidden or painted over, then maybe consider doing something that's weatherized. There are different types of labels and adhesives, so just be really careful about what you're printing on.
The label that you.
And Dave, if you go back to that last page, it'll tell you the Avery label to use.
Yes.
So that Avery 6460, that's the one, because that one is it's almost like a vinyl faced. It's got a good adhesive that can be removed. Yeah, you just don't want to get in the situation where you're causing more damage than good with these.
Other thing we mentioned too as a team was doing maybe a test plot. If you're, don't go and blast out all 5 million locations on your project, maybe go stick up 5 or 10, day one, see how they do for a day, a week, and then, then you can go blast out the rest of your stuff. But kind of make sure you understand where these are going to go and the sequence of activities so that they're not 1 in the way or 2 getting covered up. So you're printing them 10 times.
And that
really
type of
point.
Avery, those Avery labels, just everybody in the Denver office, we've got them, I think, fairly stocked for now. So everybody, as far as Dawn, Jackie, Karen, should be aware of the type we need. So they should be able to help you out as well.
Awesome. And if you're not in the Denver office or you don't have that paper available, you've always got the other option here of going the 1 per page. This is really helpful if it's just quick. You're trying to print out a few, you're going to put, painter's tape on the wall like I've got behind me. The only thing would be like at your sub stand-up meetings or other times where you're talking to people on site, just let them know that these are here for a reason and that they can use them, as opposed to maybe somebody coming through and cleaning them off. I've had that happen before where we had the cleaners come through and they saw paper on the wall and said that's probably not supposed to be there, and they ripped them all down. So that was on me for not prepping them ahead of time. But just make sure that as you're getting ready to do this, you're developing talk tracks, and we can talk about that a little bit later today, of how you'd encourage other folks to use this use these codes. Again, these are if you try to scan these right now, for example, with your camera phone, you'll see that it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't work unless you have a Procore login. So it's kind of a good segue, as far as other best practices here, kind of working our way down the agenda, is make sure that you've got your directory, tidied up, and you've got at least foreman, one foreman per subcontractor in your directory. The whole idea here is that you want to make these items accessible and easy to find. And it's kind of hard, if you're the only one scanning these things, because then you're not really saving that trip to the trailer or saving that phone call. So yeah, I see a few people testing it. Definitely try to prove me wrong here. But, if you pull up with just your phone camera, it's just going to say project/location/some number. There's no security risk here of anybody being able to see, information in the system unless they're in the Procore app. So any questions though on getting people into the directory, and if there's any concerns on that, or issues that you've run into as far as taking advantage of that unlimited user model that we have?
And my number one complaint from subcontractors is that these codes don't work. It's the biggest thing is just the learning curve of, hey, you got to have the Procore app. You got to open the camera through that app and scan this. Then you get your access to all the information. When you pull, like Dave just said, when you pull your phone out and try and do the QR, just like you do in the restaurants after COVID, it's not that intuitive. So just make sure you explain that to everybody.
Yeah. So on that note, a couple of kind of things that you can do, to potentially alleviate, that issue of people getting into an account. If we've played around with it in your directory at all, in the app itself. So you can all see my iPad now, I think. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So, when you're in the directory here, you may notice this little QR code up at the top left corner, or top right corner, other left. So when you tap on that, it's going to give you this kind of option to scan a code. And I'll do this here. So I have here a QR code that represents this superintendent. And so kind of cool, I can add this person just by scanning their code on here. So you all have this, by seeing the directory. Anybody else that is able to see a directory in any other project in Procore has the same thing. So as far as getting people in and quickly, all you really have to do now is just pick the permission template. And this will be dictated based on your permissions as well, but just something to be aware of, in the frame of QR codes, I would be doing a bad job as an SPC if I didn't mention one of the other places to use QR codes in the platform. So definitely take advantage of this to add folks. And if you need to be added too, you can always do the add me as well. So you get this right here for folks to scan. All right. But enough about that QR code. Let's take a look at, where the rubber meets the road here on scanning it, and then kind of tee us up for where we can break out into some rooms to do some testing. So while I'm kind of talking right now, make sure that you're logging in, on your phone, pull up that project 1234, that test project right here, and just have this at the ready. Because what we're going to do in our breakout rooms is we're going to start to take advantage of some of these QR codes that we've got the testing for here. And so one way that we can do this is just by pulling up the camera And we'll use I'll keep this screen up. Shane will have this screen up as well. So if you don't have these printed, that's okay. But notice how, even though I'm in the camera app right now, it's finding these locations. So see how there's like that little blue, icon on right there. So I can actually go through and, pick one of these. And if I were to go in and grab this individual one here, and this is only a mobile thing. So now I'm looking at the tilt up job, but look at how I'm able to see at a glance now every single record that's been associated with that location. So this will work, any tier down as well. But this is really what we're going to be breaking out shortly here to do, is play around with scanning some of these codes, trying to find information that's already out there, maybe commenting on it or editing it, and then going through and seeing like, hey, what can we create here? Is this going to be helpful for me, as somebody that's kind of administering the job? And what are some ideas or maybe value adds that we could talk about with our trade partners to say, hey, if you see a code, scan it, because you're only going to see items that you have permission to see. So what better way that, when a sub's saying, hey, what do I have left to do in this room, rather than you spending 20 minutes filtering items in Procore and sending them a report and email, you can walk out there in the field with them, have them point their camera at one of these codes, and boom, there's their list. So just kind of a preview of where we're going, but most people say they learn by doing, right? So what we're going to do here, and kind of bear with us because we're going to try these breakout rooms here. And I know some folks are in, different places, but what we're thinking for the breakout rooms is we're going to do 3 rooms. So we're going to do, if you're in the St. Louis office, you can go into room number 1 here. I'll share my other screen here just to go along with this. So if you're in the St. Louis office, or based out of it, maybe not there, physically, we're going to be in breakout room number 1, and you should be tagging items somewhere within the tilt up job location. If you're in Denver, pick location or pick, item or breakout room number 2 and be logging stuff in equipment and trying to come up with, use cases for that. And then if you're in any other office, not to say that it's not important, but just because I know we've got most people in those other 2 offices, jump into breakout room 3, and we're going to use the unit job location. So any questions on that? Thank you, Kristen, for putting that in the chat. But any questions on which room people are going to go to? Okay.
They're open.
Awesome. So as we're jumping in there, remember that our mission, and I'll put it in the chat as well, is going to be to favorite the couple of tools that you're going to use, and then adding a bunch of items, to those locations. So let me actually zoom in here so we can actually see this. So this is what we're hoping to do in this breakout room. So adding a photo, adding an RFI to the location, and then using the respective location based on the room number. And then if you've got time, try to jump into one of the other locations. Try to find something that somebody else that maybe is working on, and try editing it and messing with it a little bit. Let's have some fun with this, because at the end of the day, it's software. It's a little dry, but if we can have a little bit of fun for 15 minutes, that'd be a win. All right. Any questions on what we're doing in the room and which room we're going to? All right, cool. So I'm going to jump into the Denver room. So room, the one using equipment. Shane's going to jump into the Kansas City, Richmond, and Phoenix one. And Julie, if you're cool, kind of owning the war room, I'll bump around and jump in there in a little bit. So we'll shoot to spend the next like 10 minutes or so in here. And then we'll play it by ear and then come back for a group debrief. Sound good? All right. Well, everyone grab your room, and Kristen, don't be afraid to force people in there if somebody's still here after about 5 minutes.
I'll give a love tap, as my grandma says.
So just to kind of put a bow on this, a hopefully the takeaway from this is locations is just another feature, for y'all to use yourselves to find information quickly, use it as that map or that additional folder structure around it. And set it up in a way that works for you, but set it up in a way that also enables everybody else in your job site just to find what they need to find. So, if we were going to kind of recap, kind of our takeaways here, starting, at the very top, building that hierarchy and maintaining it together. You've all got permissions to manage that hierarchy in the admin level. So work together, field and office, Brinkmann and your external partners, find a hierarchy that's going to work for everybody. And practice just like we did today, with your trade partners. So if you've never used locations today, just remember how you felt today and know that anybody else that hasn't used the tool or used that feature before probably feels the same way. So try setting up a little bit of time, outside the day-to-day to just run through a dry run, especially like Corey mentioned at the beginning of maybe don't put every location up right away, make sure you can pull them off first, and do that. And then be smart about how you're getting it in there. Take advantage of those imports and those project admins or a Revit model to get them in bulk, or build them out on the web, and make sure that you're printing them out in a format that's going to work. And know that you can change. Maybe you start with 8.5 11s and you go to the Averys when you've got the time. Additionally, these are just, locations are just one of other many pieces of, metadata or data about data that you can use to find information. So use it in context with other things like photos, or drop a pin, on the drawing and then pair that with a location to help you find it later. So don't feel like it's locations or bust, it's locations and, drawings, location and photos. And then use, other methods like quick capture or punch templates or observation templates just to make it that much faster to get the information into the system, knowing that you can get it out at the right time, with that location there. And again, they also help when you have items that are, high volume. So when you've got 3,000 punch items or 300 punch items, be smart about how you're allocating, those items into a room so that you can answer that question of, hey, what do I have left to do? Or if it's a sub or a design team saying, hey, what's ready for me on the first floor? All of those questions become really easy to answer when you have a location set up ahead of time and you've got items and records tied to it. And same thing, link other records too. How helpful is it going to be during punch to know that there was an RFI that modified, a room layout or changed a, panel location or something like that. So link things like submittals and RFI set location, knowing that 3, 6, 9, 12 months later, you may want to know that information or a sub may want to know that information. And then we didn't get a chance to really dive into the permissions here, but it kind of comes with the testing with your trade partners. This last bullet point, just know that everybody still only gets to see the items they're supposed to see. So, if Corey, you scan, a location on your job and Kaylin, pretend you were a sub on that same one, you may see different lists. And that just means that you don't have to update the list of action items for them. Let the tool and the status updates that you're all doing steer the information to the right place. And know that that location, feature, whether they're picking it in the dropdown or using the QR code, is that glue, is that single place to find all the information. So I know that was a lot, but how'd everyone do on the mission? Did everybody at least get one item, linked in there? Maybe we didn't get 10, but did everybody at least get one and get the QR code at least scanned?
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So definitely on the takeaway in this, try setting up a location on one of your projects. Maybe it's just as simple as the job trailer, so like, Ross and your team over here, maybe try putting a QR code around the office to start playing around with it, get a sense for how it works rather than trying to run full steam ahead into a real life application. And who knows, maybe your next sub meeting people will be like, hey, what's that code over there? How can I use that? And see, what types of questions or problems you might be able to solve with that. So to wrap up too. Oh, go ahead.
It's funny you just mentioned that, Dave. I just took a note and said it might be a good idea to set one up on your trailer, and you can almost have a directory tied there of your project team and any permits or anything like that, any, safety plans and everything like that, just so quick access, and it's also a, you know, teach everybody that comes into the trailer how to use it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And whatever you find, make sure that you're telling, you know, other folks at your office, or you're relaying that information back to Julie and the team, because, you know, we really want to reinforce the idea that if one project has a really good idea, we want to get that out to all the other jobs, you know, so leverage the training center that you all have, and then also share any best practices that you come up with that you think would be, you know, good for other teams to know. You know, the whole training that we did today was because folks like Richard, Corey, and Kaylin had these ideas and wanted to share it with other folks. So let's keep that, you know, kind of collaboration going, and hopefully get you off the job site maybe at 5 or 5:30 instead of 9 or 10 o'clock.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave. We're going to send out a survey to everyone. Please, please, please give your feedback. I know you probably get tired of surveys, but just like every Monday training, you guys get a survey. We rely on your feedback to know how we're doing, what we need to do to improve on these trainings. And so as it's going to be very important moving forward with what we present moving in the future, and how it's presented. Right, Dave?
Absolutely. So if you didn't like the breakout rooms, that was my fault. I really wanted to try to break up a big room into small pieces. So, you know, definitely go easy on Julie and the team here. They did a ton of prep work, but that was definitely my idea. So I would own that.
All right. Okay, well, I like any ideas anybody has, please share them. We'll put something on that survey so you have a spot for that as well. And look for some emails in the future for what is coming. We've got several lined up, and yeah, we'll reach out when we need some help. Whoever, we will be looking for people, volunteers, and we will take that survey that you just filled out earlier. So I'll reach out to you guys, and we'll get some help on that as well. It's very important that we're all sharing what we're learning in the field, not just what I tell you from sitting in the office. I realize the importance of that. So I don't have anything else. Do you, Dave?
No, I think I've talked enough.
All right, Richard, Kaylin, and Corey, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, guys,
Thanks,
have a great
everybody.
afternoon.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Take care.